I'm going to hang up the phone.
There we go.
All right. Hello, everybody, namely Josh. Good to see you here on this live broadcast. Josh and I will jump in together and talk to our imaginary future audience.
Hey, everyone. So now this is our first time. Evelyn and I have been talking about doing a live stream for at least a year. And now we have the technology to do it. And also we've been making a lot of progress in lots of other things that we've been doing first. I think what started this is you and I talk a lot about living more sustainably post mindset shift. I think that a lot of people out there, when they think about when they expect to talk about sustainability is going to be talking about, burden, chore, everyone's dying. And those are things to talk about. That's not what we talk about. I mean, it does come up, but more in the context of there's something we can do about it. To me, if you feel powerless, it's like, why are you telling me stuff? I can't do anything about it. How's making me feel bad going to help? And I think people would enjoy listening to us talk.
Here's hoping.
Usually talk more than that.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk more. I do think that we were, this is like a first draft, so it's exciting. We're playing with the technology as we're figuring it out as we go, true to form. And yeah, we didn't really announce this as a live session, mostly because we're still exploring and experimenting, but the recording should be available. So in the spirit of that, this being part of the record, maybe we can go into some discussion about like what our intention is for these live sessions and what we're talking about, how it feels as far as post mindset shift, but also why should anyone watch? Maybe we can start there.
Yeah, I think that one of the things, so my podcast is over 800 episodes, and one of the things that helped it start was, it wasn't advice, but someone told me, no matter how great a podcast becomes, no matter how great a podcaster becomes, when he or she looks back, listens to their first episode, they're always going to cringe. And that was very liberating for me. It's like, just get the first one out. Mm-hmm. So maybe this will be a great episode, maybe not. But I think that there is a temptation on the first episode to say, this is what it's all about. So that people listen to it. But I don't know about you, but when I listen to podcasts or videocasts, I tend to listen to the most recent one and then go backward at first, and then maybe go back to the first one. So I'm not sure how many people watch this one, but still, there's some things I thought about to introduce on what we're doing. I think the big one is for us to share the joy of pursuing a path of ever more joyfully living sustainably that I think is not mainstream, and I hope becomes mainstream. That we enjoy exploring. I enjoy exploring what's next, exploring the frontier of living more sustainably. The exasperation, and I think we'll get the chance to vent of what we see of people, of the culture that we're, I think, leaving behind and hopefully helping change. There's the teams that we're forming and part of, which is the other people working on the community, building the community, the alumni. I think they're absolutely inspirational. I mean, it's what's happening with them is it's huge. And I hope that we create a breath of fresh air, that this is a place where people can go and enjoy hearing sustainable talk and being hopefully inspired, seeing maybe we can be role models for people. Any thoughts on your part for what else we might be doing with this set of live streams? Anything you're looking forward to, or?
Yeah, I do hope that the more people who join us, the more collaborative we can make it, the more interactive we can make it, listen to what people want to hear us talk about. And I do want to be careful, I suppose, in our venting or in the the moments where we might want to discuss how it feels to still live in a culture, but also be extricating yourself from that culture. That I remember during the last flight I ever took of my life, was to go to New York to meet you and another mentor of mine. I figured if I'm gonna put my life into this, like I should know for real these people. But I remember we like walked past a restaurant and you said something like, "Oh, like these people." Or it was like you were venting because I was like a colleague, or it felt like a colleague. And yet I didn't I still felt like I identified with like the people at the restaurant, and so it felt like an accusation in my direction about like this thing that these people were doing. Really what you were commenting on was the culture of like, oh, this is the best we have to this is the best we can offer ourselves, is this like false, hurried, expensive pretense of connection. And sure, like I'm not saying that people at restaurants are all pretending to be connected, just I think your commentary was about the culture. I felt like it was personal, and I want to make sure that we don't do that, or that we're careful about that in our meanderings.
Yeah, I think we do run the risk of, you and I have talked so much over so long, over so many things, that there's a lot of things that we're probably going to inadvertently take for granted that people get. We'll have to be careful to say, oh, by the way, the reason we said that, we're referring to lots of different things, which happens when people in one culture are talking about a different culture.
Sure.
So I thought for the first one, we were talking before this on the phone of what to do for the first one. And we have this list of episodes that we like. Each time we speak, we want to cover something particular. And I guess we can list some of them maybe later. But I thought of this first one, maybe we could share, like I could say what your origin story is and what I think motivates in terms of what we're doing here, not origin story overall. And then also what motivates us. So like what, and I think it would be interesting to, you're smiling because I think it's kind of, I wonder how accurate my understanding of your origin is and what's motivating you and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Who should go first?
You, of course, I want to hear all about me.
So I thought of that topic, but I wasn't sure you'd go for it. So I wasn't sure, I didn't like prepare ahead of time, but
Now
I
you're
think
on the
that,
spot of like, what do you really know about me, Josh? I'm a
yeah.
stranger to you.
So um, I think, all right. So before you, okay, you contacted me based on the New Yorker article, which I think I don't know what led you to find that. It was by chance. You weren't looking for something, but you contacted me originally for straight leadership coaching. You're in graduate school getting a master's in social work.
Mhm.
And the article was about me living off the grid, a kind of snarky article. And when I say kind of, I mean very. And so you mentioned, so I told you, right, one-on-one coaching with me is kind of expensive. The workshop is relatively cheap. And I mentioned the sustainability leadership workshop is mainly leadership, secondarily sustainability. So you could get a leadership coaching experience at a much lower cost by doing that. Now you live in Oregon, albeit Eastern Oregon, which is close to Idaho, which is, I think I think you described it as much more red. Like I think a lot of people think of Oregon as very blue, woke, stuff like that. So you're in, can I say what town you live in, the
Yeah.
city? So LeGrand, Oregon. And I think is like a little zone of blue within a red area itself, within a mainly blue area.
Mm-mm,
Not red
no
at all.
blue.
Not blue at all.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
there's blue people everywhere. There's red people everywhere. But yeah, we're very much, our voting habits are very conservative.
Okay. Lots of Second Amendment stuff there.
Hmm.
Okay. Uh, and nonetheless, I think that if I remember right, you later said that when I talked about sustainability, you were thinking something like, thanks. I like the idea, but I'm one of the good guys here. I got it.
Hmm.
And I think you later said like, I say the right things and I buy the right things. So
Hmm.
I'm one of the good guys.
Hmm.
And, but then something led you still to do the workshop. So that I'm not so sure. It was maybe it's just saving money, getting leadership coaching at a cheaper cost. I know also there were two other big things in your life, at least two other big things. One was hip hop, KRS-One, the teacher, and that had resonated with you. So you had discovered KRS-One not long before me. What's the name of his book?
Well, he's written a few. The Gospel of Hip Hop was what really spoke to me, and I knew of him for a long time. Most of us have, Josh, but yeah, he as a spiritual teacher, he had come into my life at a similar time that you did.
Okay, yeah, I knew BDP from like college, I guess, but I didn't really know much past that. So I had no idea that he was like a spiritual person or that he was like a founding member of hip hop or anything like that. I didn't know the history, but I knew it was very important to you. And I think that at the time there was a lot, you had gone through a period in LA where you were, my read, and also you'd done at least one protest in which you got arrested to make a statement, not unruly. And my read is that you wanted to say a lot, but didn't have a particular direction or effective way of communicating what you wanted to effectively or to create the change that you wanted to. And so I think that yes, yeah, I'm looking at you, I'm like, I should have checked this with you a long time ago. And that something about this resonated. It's like, maybe it was effective to explore something important to you. And then, well, I know that when you did the workshop the first time, you were pushing back really hard on like, you're saying it's not telling people what to do. And then you were telling people what to do. And so what made you stick with it? I don't know. I don't know why you stuck with it when you were so like, when it didn't make sense to you. But that's like the origin story as I understand it.
Yeah, pretty close. I'll fill in
Okay.
and color, and then we'll switch
The other way.
roles. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess just to answer the question why I stuck with it, because I needed the graduate credits, because the workshop.
You getting credit? I forgot.
Yeah, it was part of the hours I needed to put in for my internship, which was at Howard they call it CAP track versus direct practice. So like CAP stands for community administration and policy. So leadership level stuff was within the wheelhouse. And I figured, well, environmental justice, I guess that checks the box. It's sort of the stepchild of all the other justices. People are like, yeah, well, Flint, Michigan, we're not a big fan of. And yeah, okay, I guess it is, the marginalized and the oppressed who tend to get their water polluted, but like, we'll deal with that after we deal with SNAP benefits or whatever. So I wasn't particularly passionate about what I saw at the time as environmental justice. But I was also eager to be in a room where my skepticism didn't get me evicted, which is how I had felt in a lot of rooms I had been in up until that point. So I think I stuck with it because I saw I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think anything worth standing should be able to stand up after you dump a healthy bucket of skepticism on it. Anything that crumbles under a bucket of skepticism was probably meant to crumble. And your method just didn't. It didn't crumble. And you weren't evicting me from the room. So that was and I was getting credit for it. So that's a big part of why I joined and stuck with it. I think there were.
Can I add one other big piece of it?
Please.
That I forgot that your book, which I listened to, your experience of witnessing a friend pass almost right in front of you, it profoundly affected you and sent you on a journey of discovery of life. And so I think you were very open to lots of things, and that wasn't specific to this, but I think points to your mindset at that time. I guess was that a few years before or more than 5 years before?
Yeah, that was the pivotal, like before and after moment of my life, like the defining before and after moment, watching him die in 2016. you know, a lot of things changed in my life after that because the promise I had made essentially in that moment and the things I had seen and the way I understood like reality to work was just new. It was new and fresh, and I was committed to staying there, or to like keeping alive this thing I had learned in his death. And that thing, that motivation pulled me into LA. That's what got me like walking around. You can see my Estero back there. He looks so
Was that it? Okay.
little.
Yeah.
He looks so little, but he's giant. He's like this big. um, uh, yeah, there was a lot of exploration without the only intention of that was to explore what I had been taught to be true and hard and fast, and to sort of push on the boundaries of my own culture and my own belief systems, and to trust. Like a large part of that whole experiment was faith and trust. Like, well, the world has told me this one thing, but my experience has been that that's not true. What would happen if? And there was a lot of prayer mode. There was a lot of prayer mindset of like, where do I need to be? What do I need to be doing? Just guide me and I'll go. And I would listen to that quiet voice inside that we all have, that feels like it can come from the outside too, because the boundaries are really actually quite permeable. So I wouldn't say, yeah, and that did eventually lead me to this one person protest that got me arrested as I intended, consensual. I was very polite. You can ask the police officers. And so I guess all the things I did felt right at the right time and felt like they were doing what I was trying to get them to do. Although I did understand that one person protest did feel sort of like the end of the line of like, okay, I walked down this path. It's more like a cul-de-sac. So I'm gonna find a new. I'm glad I figured that out. I needed to walk down that road. I wasn't wrong to do it, but I'm not going to stay here. Mickey Singer has a similar moment, like in his ascetic meditation mindset in his early 20s, where he like is just going down this path of like, I must meditate all day, every day. And he ends up having this dream of like being in this cave where he can't breathe. He's like, okay, I get it. It's not here. Like I can't keep go there. I've reached the end, the pinnacle of how far this road goes. Anyway, so that all of those explorations of like, how do I best stay in alignment with what I learned through my friend's death? How do I continue to walk in faith without just being like an artist weirdo doing the thing that the day brings up? How do I start to build some community and some, relationships? How do I learn how to work as a team? And that brought me to graduate school, which I always had, I think, kind of reasonable expectations for. I remembered some of the foolishness of academia from my past experience of academia. And it's a funny place. Lots of like pat on the backs, pats on the back. But I was willing to step into that because they were a room that, couldn't evict me. And I knew that I would get some letters after my name. I might learn some stuff. That was an extra bonus. And I would be connected to people I didn't know who were probably the people I needed to be connected with. And that's where you came in. I couldn't have predicted it, but again, in that the energy was in faith. The energy was like, I don't know what is going to happen. When I went into it, I was like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know the right thing's going to happen. So I think me coming across sustainability and starting to recognize that it was actually scratching the itch that I was trying to get at with these other mechanisms, that it was like it helped solve problems in my life that I thought were unrelated, like being out of shape. If you had told me that living more sustainably would get me in shape, but joyfully, like this fun thing where I often will bike past the gym and I see people get out of their cars and walk into the gym, and it's just so funny to me. It's just such a funny cultural phenomenon of like, I will drive my car and then go into this building and then work my body and then leave in my car and go into another building. Meanwhile, like I ride in the world's best convertible. Like I'm enjoying my commute time is also my workout time, and I'm ultimately saving time. Okay, sorry. I guess that's a lot of talking in response to what you said, but I think that answers or colors in some of the grayer areas of your version of my origin story.
Thanks for filling in for me and for everybody else as well. And I'm sure more stuff will come, because also not there was me, but also in that workshop. Every workshop has amazing people, but like some of the people in that one were just really, just really inspiring, going all around. So that's only, and I didn't know if that was the very first workshop, I think. And so I didn't know if people would show up to the first one. If the people came to the first, I didn't know if they'd come to the second. And yeah, you stuck with it. Okay, so what's my origin story?
Okay, so what I know of you, Josh, is that 10 or so years ago, more than 10 years ago, you started experimenting. Like, you knew that the environment, that there were these environmental problems, but not your first priority. Like, you went to business school, you had the path was laid out for you to make yourself some real money. I think at that point you had started you had done the startup thing, and that, like, the expectation of where that went changed, and it didn't quite end the way you had foreseen it, but you rolled with the punches. Maybe that's when you did go back to business school. Anyway, sustainability, from what I know in your life, it happened when you, for just a moment, stop telling yourself the story of like, well, it's really not my problem to solve. Like, I'm just one guy. It's governments and corporations, right? They're the ones that actually have the power to do something. And then from what I remember, you looked at your trash can and you're like, well, that's my trash. That's not like a government's trash or a corporation's trash. And that you made from there this commitment to yourself, or this challenge to yourself, to go a week without packaged food. And that between the time that you had the idea and that you actually did it, it was like 6 months of like, how can I, and getting everything in the rubric set, which you realize everything in the rubric's never going to be set, just hit go. And so you did hit go, and you learned some things. Like, you thought that it was going to be this real bummer. I remember you talking about wanting to fail. Like, you wanted to be like, well, I tried it. It was too hard. Sorry, guys. Like, I did what I could. Good luck with saving the world. I don't know who you're talking to in this like analogy, because there's no one there. But I remember that you reported, not right away, that the food was delicious, but pretty soon you figured out like how to make it delicious, and you've shared with a lot of us how to make it delicious. I had to relearn my whole kitchen, which was kind of easy and fun. And that from that experiment, the fact that like your hypothesis was so different, I guess we could say wrong. Your hypothesis was wrong. That you thought it was going to be this terrible thing that you could just then put to bed, and instead it was actually this awesome thing that you wanted to do more of. Then it led to, what sort of ratcheting it up. Like, oh, that was kind of fun and liberating, and actually the food's way cheaper and better. And like, why did we ever think that sustainability was expensive? But then you started making other challenges that, I'm probably going to get the order wrong here, but at some point you like stop, you challenge yourself to like not use as much electricity, which then, when you're sitting in a dark apartment, you're like, well, I guess I'll go outside because it's still light in the sky out there, which led you to being in your community more, even I think volunteering and going to spend time in other places where the lights were on. So like, again, on the other side of sustainability is always community. I remember that you stopped like you were still flying at first. And then when you recognized like, ooh, flying's a thing I could stop doing, that there was a part of you that was nervous about, what am I going to be missing out on? And that there might have been some growing pains or shrinking pains, I guess, at first of like, oh, I can't go to that conference. But that ultimately it turned into a thing. It's sort of like how fasting turns into like, it's not about not eating. It's about like this other thing that opens up. It's about all the other things you could be doing. So like not flying wasn't just like sitting at home like, I wish I could be angry at the airport, because everyone seems to be angry at airports. Everyone loves to complain about airports. It's like it opened up this whole other world of what you could be doing in your own backyard, and the way and the trains you can take, and the ride share systems you can figure out, and the bikes you can mend. So again, it seems like every experiment you did in your own life was this, it was like pulling the curtain behind this thing that you thought was going to be this hideous monster, and it's actually this like beautiful woman, or I don't know, like something awesome. And then that led to your podcasts, which it's these invitations, and from people from all walks of life, like from the upper echelons of big time influencers and CEOs to like the normals, who all to a varying degree respond to the Spodek method. You developed this thing called the Spodek method. Didn't like hit it out of the park at first. There was a lot, you're like, oh, that didn't work. Oh, people feel pushed on. Like, I don't want that. Oh yeah, I remember you, maybe before the podcast, you started like a workshop or a class at NYU, like a lecturing class of like, okay guys, these are the problems. And it kind of fell flat, and you're like, oh, well, you guys suck. I guess you don't know. Like, I tried. Now I'm done. But you weren't really done. You recognize like, oh, that didn't work because I was pushing on them, and no one wants to be pushed on, and that's extrinsic, and we have to shift it. So your podcast helped you develop the Spodek method, which then led to this intrinsic motivation mechanism. I call it a therapeutic intervention. I see it as taking all these bits of other therapy methods and putting it together in this new shape. But you can deconstruct it. Like, there's nothing, it's not rocket science, even though you are a rocket scientist. And that the workshop, that the podcast then transitioned kind of naturally into this real-time community building workshop experience, which is taking this, the podcast is kind of a one and done. Like, sometimes people come back and that's cool, but it's, it's like, it's a one-on-one situation. It doesn't leave a lot of room for people to kind of grow within that sustainability community, and that the workshops were the door that opened that, and that are still, I would say, going strong, but I also feel like they're picking up steam. That we're still on that adoption curve. We're still on those early stages of like, not everybody gets it yet. Not everybody, we're still having a lot of resistance of like, why would I have food to get on the table. Why would I, like, yeah, I care about the environment, but to what degree? Okay, that's like getting into the weeds of the problems we're facing, less about your origin story. Okay, how did I do?
Yeah, that's very accurate. And all I can point out is like refinements. For example, when you filled in the part about the series of lectures I gave at NYU, it wasn't a class. It was I could just reserve a room as an adjunct professor, not connected to a class, and just have people. And I invited people, and I think I did like 3 or 4 of these, and it was all by the book, what you're supposed to say. Like, here's the problem, here's a way out, here's what you can do. And everyone, and these students who loved my classes, classes in entrepreneurship and leadership, and also just some friends, they were like, why are you telling us? We're the good guys. Tell the others. They're the ones who are the problem. And the phrase that stuck in my head afterward, I was so frustrated, because I was like, why aren't you getting this? Because I also thought, if you just had this little experience that I did, you would also have the shift that I had. That's all I got to do is get someone to try it just a little bit, to go for a week without packaged food, or to avoid flying for a little while. Although I think this was before my avoiding flying. Mm-hmm. And the phrase was, just let it burn. Fine. If that's the way you're going to be about it, I tried. I did my best. If you're not going to do it, if you want to let it burn, let it burn. I'm like, at the time, in my mid to late 40s, I guess. And I'm going to die before the worst of it happens. So you got to deal with it. You're younger than I am. And that was a very unrewarding feeling. Let it burn is not like, what a day. So, and then I started realizing how much the messages on sustainability were like, here's how you have to, like, it's lecture, it's telling people what to do. And it's, I was doing what everyone else was doing, and it wasn't working. And Now, I did know in leadership, there's like intrinsic motivation. I wasn't tapping into intrinsic motivation. I wasn't leading. I was managing, or I was not
Right.
even managing, lecturing. And yeah, so that's what led to the podcast. So another big thing, you did, I didn't, um, I did not expect that the week of avoiding packaged food, I thought it would make my life worse. And I look forward to that. So I could say, I tried. Yeah, as you said.
Right.
Another big thing was I did not intend, I didn't have a plan. I didn't expect that one to work. I did have this pattern of, I liked the feeling I had of, oh, this is going to make my life worse. I had that feeling with other things like flying.
Right.
I felt like if I don't fly, that's going to make my life worse. I had all sorts of reasons why flying was good. I grew up, until that point, flying was an unalloyed good. My parents met overseas. I felt like I flew a lot more than others when I was a kid, and so I felt that was a good thing. I felt like we're exploring cultures and things like that. So to not fly was taking one for the team. And I really did not expect that one to work out. Certainly not that within the first 3 months, I was thinking about maybe I'll do another year. And by the end of the first year, when there was a death in the family, and that put a strain on things. And also in the first month I had to turn down paying gigs for me to do public speaking.
Right.
And it just flipped very quickly to, oh, my life is better this way. And it took me a while to figure out in exactly the ways I thought it would be worse, and why that pattern, when I learned about addiction, why that pattern makes so much sense. What's exactly, the way I put it is, you tell me what you fear losing in getting rid of a dependency, and I'll tell you exactly what you'll get more of.
Mm-hmm.
Then, yeah. And the leadership versus management was a big piece of it. Was no one was tapping into the motivation that was already there in all of us. And that just made it infuriates me when I see the messaging on sustainability, that it's, you have to give stuff up. It's a burden. And all these people who they're saying things like Jefferson did and doing the opposite as Jefferson also did. And I think they're like, just pay attention to the words. You do what I'm telling, don't pay attention to everything else, but we pay attention to everything. So the credibility and integrity, you can't lead without them. And I wouldn't have said at the beginning, but the hands-on practical experience became very important to me. So that's what I would clarify of what you said. I mean, you nailed the big points. There was no plan. And if at any point I felt that it was making my life worse, I mean, when I stopped flying, there is what now I would call withdrawal period.
Sure.
And withdrawal is hard.
Right.
But, yeah. And I don't want to pretend like I don't want to play light with something very serious for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But if it made my life worse, I would stop doing it. But it keeps making my life better. And in ways that when I lead others, it improves their lives in similar ways. So it's not just, it could be just me. So a big part of the Spodek method was finding out, is it just my quirkiness that I happen to live a life, or I happen to be a certain person that it works for me, but no one else.
Right.
I also had to see it could work for me, but maybe I can't, maybe it could work for someone else, but I can't predictably, reliably lead someone to that. So I had to work that out. Only once I found out it wasn't just me, that I could develop a technique that would work, now called the Spodek method, and that I could teach that Spodek method to others. That's when that's like 10 years after that first experience, but that's maybe 7 years, because I think the workshops have been about 3 years now. That's when it was full bore. Like this can lead to, did I tell you? Oh, I got to tell you about.
Wait, but finish your sentence. This can lead to what?
When someone someone practicing the Spodek method one-on-one is just one person practicing something. What
Welcome to New York, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, sorry, you can hear that. Okay. What I envision is an orchestra playing like Beethoven's Ninth. Bum, 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 bum. So I found a video of just like a guy with a horn playing the horn part. Mm-hmm. And one person playing a horn of just one horn of the whole orchestral everything is nothing. And this is a beginner playing just one part of the whole orchestra playing Ode to Joy. If you listen to that, it's like, what's that? But then you listen to the whole thing and it's like, oh my God, this is like a profound experience. It's amazing. It's the whole orchestra. And you can imagine everyone in the audience is like wants to jump out of their seats because it's so amazing.
Mhm.
And so the workshop enables people to play that one part. But when I hear someone in the workshop doing just that one part, leading one person one-on-one, I can hear the full thing because I know where it goes. If you go on, I'll put the link somewhere for people that listen to like one guy playing the horn, and everyone knows where it goes. And so we can all hear the big thing, even though that person is just playing one thing. That person, if they haven't heard the big thing, they won't hear the big thing, but they're on their way.
So I'm gonna bring some tea if you can hear it.
I hope that made sense of that. The vision that I see, that I hope others can also see, is a world of everyone living sustainably, joyfully, and sharing joy, wonder, awe, sublimity, sublime, the divine, and getting back gratitude and returning the gratitude with, here's how to do it yourself for other people. So this wasn't the origin story, but this is like what something of this, like it was clear to me, having done a startup before that began with an idea that when I described it to people, they're like, that sounds neat, but what are you talking about? I was like, how can you not get it? And I had to build a small one, then a bigger one, then a bigger one, then a bigger one. And then we spent like $300,000 to build this giant life-size thing in this warehouse in New Jersey. And finally, and even then people are like, okay, I get it, but what is it? I'm like, recognizing you just have to walk people through to see that vision so that it becomes their vision as well. So I knew once I felt that intrinsic motivation, once I felt that avoiding packaged food, cooking from scratch, once I learned, and it wasn't just like steamed vegetables over lentils for months with a little salt and pepper. I always say salt and pepper, but it was a little vinegar too. Is that an odd mix? In any case, it gave some flavor. But eventually it was like my famous no packaging vegan stews, which you call
veggie hash without the trash.
Yeah. Once that really clicked, and I was like, oh, there's lots of vegetables. All these little differences in vegetables make big differences in flavor. And I could see from there to global cultural change was just that. From there on, that's regular business. Yeah, they're making me hungry.
Yummy food. I know. I'm gonna show a few like food yum pictures so that
I bet that one was solar powered.
These little dried like yummy green flakes were beet greens that I couldn't eat fast enough, and so I chopped them into tiny pieces and just let them dry out, and they didn't mold. They just turned into yummy toppings. So now I can have them year round.
And the experience of nature is so wonderful. It's so available, even in a city, even in Manhattan, where there's far fewer trees than there used to be.
Yum, yum. I know you're talking about other things, but I just want to. It's one thing to say the words of how yummy the food is. It's another to make your mouth water.
A little amuse-bouche.
Or like, isn't that just the little thing? The amuse-bouche is like the tiny thing. This is like a big old plate.
These are big dishes, yeah, and quick and easy and filling. And
I love feeding them to people. Now that, okay, can I just go off on that for a second? I have a bunch of work meetings, like work lunches that need to happen after this really cool strategic planning we've been doing with the warming station that I work with. I'm on the board. It's important work to me. Like everyone should have a roof over their head, especially in sub-zero temperatures. Okay. There's like how sustainability fits into that is one thing. Basically, there's now this like new fire that's lit under me as far as where we're going as an organization and what we're doing. And I'm realizing, oh, I need to be the leader here. Like I can't just wait for someone else to be like, okay, what are we doing next? Like I have the vision now, and I have the help and expertise and helping me put it together. So now I'm making it happen where and this isn't to say it's all just me. I'm just saying I'm more clearly understanding my role instead of like passively kind of waiting for someone else to figure it out. I'm the chair of the board, by the way, so it's about time that I figured out my role. But ultimately, the this is a long walk around to say I had invited each board member out to lunch because we have some follow-up work to do, and it's so hard to get people in a room at the same time. I was like, let's just do one-on-one lunches. We can go over the strategic plan and basically hash out who's going to do what speaks to your heart, what's fun for you. And then I thought, why are we going out to lunch? Why don't I just have people over? We like they've been talking about, one member is like, oh, I have these headaches and my doctor keeps wanting to give me medicine. And I really think it's just all the crap that's in our food. And I was like, okay, you talk about that. Like the work I do, what I'm hearing you say is that the way we're living is unsustainable. Is that like you can't have a headache like that every day. You can't eat food that makes you sick all forever. That's not what sustainable looks like. My work is helping you find the places in your life that are unsustainable and shifting them to the ways that work for you. And on that note, I'm going to have you over for lunch and I'm going to cook you this food and I'm going to show you how to do it. So it starts to weave through life. Plus it's going to be way cheaper for me to just feed people. Like it's like 80 cents a pound for beans. You know what I mean? It's basically pennies. Like pick up change that you see on the sidewalk and you can feed yourself dinner with this bulk food. I mean, sorry to make like food gross. It's not like sidewalk food, but like what I'm saying is it's way, way cheaper. It's way more affordable than going out to eat. Plus we can do it in my house and we have like the space to spread out and actually make it a work lunch. So the doors just keep opening is what I'm saying. Thanks for letting me interject.
Yeah, and it's cheaper, and the way I describe it is it's dirt cheap. Like I can buy dirt for more. I can pay more for dirt per pound than I pay for legumes. Yeah.
Or bottled water.
And during the pandemic, I would meet executives to go pick up litter in Washington Square Park together, which led to this great story in the book of how one guy is like, he sees his daughter picking up litter and he's like, oh, it's lovely that you're doing that, but why'd you start doing that? And she said, because you do. And he told me that he does because I do. And that like the second degree. Yeah. Do we have time to go into what motivates the other? So there's the origin, but then there's also what drives us.
Yeah. Let's do it lightning round.
Okay, you go first.
Okay. I think what motivates you is a vision of global culture change, which like there's a lot of buzzwords in that I think people like are naturally going to resist. Like, oh, things are fine the way they are. Like, oh, the evil we know, or the is it evil we know versus evil we don't?
The devil we know.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thanks. Excuse me. Tea. But that. Be that as it may, if we can just put like global culture change into a bucket that we know is the intention is beneficial. It's not like to coerce people into doing something they don't want to do or to pretend that they enjoy it, but to really live better lives across the globe. I see that as your motivation. I know that your life has been improved by living sustainably. So I think that continuing to basically live your optimal life. I mean, I know that your exercise routine is free. It's like burpees and some kettlebells that you got on Craigslist and going up and down the stairs to the like 11 stories, although I think your roof is still closed off for construction. So I would say that there's like the personal vision of living your best life, but also sharing it forward, that your motivation is to help the world live their best lives and basically solve all of our environmental problems in doing so. Am I close?
So it's not far off, although the language I would use is different. Because to major in physics is a big deal. It's not like poli-sci or pre-med that
Social work.
popular majors. I mean, people could shift between philosophy and English if they want. Physics is like, it's hardcore. And to me, the beauty of nature, like and a lot of people think of physics as like white lab coats or building technology or maybe Einstein with the crazy hair. To me, it's the beauty of nature and the patterns in the equations, that the beauty of a flower or a raindrop or a rainbow, it's in the equations if you've worked with them enough. And the beauty goes it's not, I can understand why we would find a blue sky beautiful, because ancestrally that's, that was healthy. And to have like a spring tree by kale.
Or like it was like decorative cabbage, but just patterns of nature I also find beautiful. Continue.
And it makes sense why something like that would be beautiful to us,
Yeah.
but it's not obvious why a galaxy would be beautiful, or a model of an atom or of neutrons, because those were outside of our experience. And yet the beauty is all the way down and all the way up. I mean, there's some things aren't particularly beautiful, but that exploration of finding more and more beauty was, to me, what physics was about. And physics was really finding the beauty of nature in ever more deep places, ever more depth of nature and symmetries and things like that. And now I meditate. I can look at a pile of garbage and see the beauty in it. I can look at a landfill and see the beauty of it if I choose to. I can even see the beauty of pollution that's killing people if I really work at it. And yet there's something a little more beautiful about not plastic in the ocean than plastic in the ocean, and lots of abundant life over big dead zones.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think that this beauty is just mine. This recognition of the beauty is just mine. And I think there's something really deeply human that we're losing. We're stomping on. So that's a big piece of it. This aesthetic beauty that I feel like we're losing. I mean, actively pushing down, squashing. That's the outward part to nature, also inward. And then there's the human side of leadership. To me, is helping other people do what they already want to do but haven't figured out how. Something I cannot stand is coercion and cajoling and convincing. That's another episode. It's supposed to be lightning round. I can't stand that, and it's all over in sustainability. It's
Right.
so much convincing, cajoling.
Like, for example,
lecturing.
tell us what you mean by that.
10 little things. Here's 10 little things you can do for the environment.
Okay, this is one of the things I really pushed back on. At first, I was like, what do you hate about 10 little things you can do for the environment? I could not wrap my head around why you hated this so much. But so can you just talk a little bit about what's coercive about that?
That would say more cajoling. It's like, it implies you don't want to do it. And little things.
Right.
10 implies 10, like a checklist. And then people are like, well, what do I need to get an A? I'll do that number.
Yeah.
I'll do enough to get a passing grade, and with grade inflation, that's fine. And it's solving it for you as if the solving is a burden.
Yeah. Yes.
So the big change for me was when I'm doing these workshops and people doing the Spodek method back to me. And at the beginning, I thought, how many times can I have someone do it back to me? Because I'm going to run out of things that I can do. And the opposite happened. The more that I did it, the more I found new things to do. It's not a checklist that you run out of. It's skills that the more you do it, to me, it feels like someone who's learning to play music. Oh, I'd better not learn too many songs because I might run out.
Right.
When it's more like the more songs you play, the more you learn how to play more.
Mm-hmm.
So I only want to help people live by their values more. And the values that I find people not living. Okay, one-on-one, this still exists in America in what my book calls paid culture, polluting, depleting, imperialist, and addictive. That's PAID, sorry, in the wrong order. Is and I lost my train of thought. Anyway, the people are like, they feel like there's only so many things that they can do, and then they're done. And on the contrary, it's the more that I do, the more I find more to do. And I want to share that with people. I want to help you. Oh, the values that one-on-one, we still practice values embodied by sayings like, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, which, as far as I know, is in every culture that anthropologists have ever found. Mm-hmm. Leave it better than you found it. And, we could call this is Enlightenment values, and it's indigenous values. Live and let live, leave it better than you found it, love your neighbor as yourself.
Yep.
And when our behavior affecting others is mediated through the environment, that's gone. If someone wants to fly somewhere, the question is, the two things are, do you have time? Can you afford it? If it affects someone else, that's all. No, don't talk to me about that.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, but Josh, I value family. What about the family that gets displaced from their land to get to the minerals and fuel underneath? It's not, sorry. And by the way, all this stuff this is the sort of thing that at the beginning, that I refer to as like, what I just said is going to probably ruffle feathers for a lot of people.
Mhm.
Like, people have
Don't
to
make me
remind
feel
me,
bad.
yeah, Josh, I love my family members. Obviously, you don't. This is like, because I love my family. The people being displaced from their land, they probably love their families too, and they're getting displaced and being made into refugees. So
Let's talk about that next time.
ultimately, it's love. It's, and I'm still getting used to talking about how much acting, how whatever I do, taking into account how it affects everyone else,
Mm.
is wonderful. It is, what could be more human? It's love.
Yeah.
And I'm not a hippie. I'm not a tree hugger. I'm not I'm not someone who talks this way most of the time. But there's no other word for it. Of And the opposite is isolation,
Right.
giving up.
Right.
So love and beauty, two of the big things driving me.
Yeah. Those are good ones.
So for you, I think, okay, you got 3 sons, and the relationships, I don't think you got into it for them, but I keep hearing about transformations that happened in these relationships. One of them was when, instead of going to pick them up, driving, there were middle steps, but eventually it was like them taking the bus on their own. So I hear like maturation of your sons, more independence, and also less screen time. Like that, just, there's all these things that happen. You keep coming to me and saying, Josh, what you said was going to happen happened.
Yeah.
And so your
I
personal
hate it when I say
journey,
that. I'm like, ugh, Josh is right again. Great. Don't let it go to his head.
all it does is motivate me to think of other things to predict that will happen later. And
um, yeah,
your
go. Keep
personal growth is like, you're constantly discovering things about yourself, about potential beyond what you thought you had, about area, like some things earlier in this conversation, I was like, you sound like Lorna. So I think
going.
you're getting coaching and mentoring and discovering. I think that you had a lot of passion before, but not ways to effectively channel it to get the results you were looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that led you to push against culture in a way that, I don't know how to say, it's aimless, like ineffective. And it wasn't that you didn't care. On the contrary, you cared a lot, but what's the point if you can't do anything about it? What's the point? And now there's like a path, and it's changing your relationships with everyone around you, with your family, but I think most of all with yourself. I think that you're growing in ways that you didn't know that you could.
Mm-hmm.
And you're becoming, have you read The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield?
Mm-hmm. Well, I
His
am
word,
reading it presently.
so his word professional. And that doesn't necessarily mean, someone who makes money doing something. Someone who shows up, gets the job done. They put the time in.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's a path toward Stephen Pressfield's professional.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you do it, the more you find more yet to do. And the more rewarding it is, yet more rewarding it becomes. And I think the relationships with the growing team, I think it's just a wonder. Especially, we just keep going through these transitions. And so anyway, so I think it's your personal discovery and the relationships that how it's making your relationships blossom.
Sure. Yeah, I wouldn't call that inaccurate. It definitely has. I think, if, like you said, if it made my life worse, I wouldn't be doing it. So there was that. I think part of my motivation is like, what more in my life can get better? I'm never like bored anymore. I'm never like, well, I don't want to like overdo it, but those feelings of loneliness and isolation and depression or like out of shapeness, those have all just kind of naturally dissipated. So yes, I'm still a human being walking on this earth, with human struggles. And a lot of those struggles, at least the knots aren't so tight anymore with this new sustainability lens. It's like a lens I can see my whole life through. In fact, I think that's some of the work we need to do is helping, like the Spodek method helps. Anyway, the lens part of it, I think, can be embedded in lots of other fields. Um, and the relationships, yeah, I mean, with my kids, certainly, again, it was never like intentionally that. I didn't get into sustainability so that I would have fun game nights with my kids. I hate games. Now you know, I'm that person in the family who hates fun. Except I don't really. I was just so used to defining fun as this passive thing, like, oh, I'm so tired, let's just watch a movie. And sometimes we still do have movie nights, and that's fun too, but there's a lot more activating fun we all have together as a family. That's part of it. I I would be remiss if I did not also include this anchoring point of my motivation, which is that it ties in to what I promised when I watched Marshall die. This work is in alignment with that promise I made myself, that promise I made God, that promise I made to the rest of humanity, which is, okay, now I've seen the truest of truths. This is a thing that you can't there's nothing you can do to make me believe that what I know from that experience is untrue. In the same way that if you tried to convince me I didn't love my kids, like, well, you could maybe probably come up with mountains of evidence, but there's no way. That it's just unquestionable. It's unquestionable. So that truth has been this shining light. At times it's brighter than other times. And I always knew that what I did with my life would have to be in alignment with that. Otherwise like stop doing it.
Mhm.
And so recognizing that the way I've actually articulated that is the way I'll stay connected to that kernel of truth is to do everything I can to alleviate the most unnecessary suffering on earth. That's it. Like, I'll do what I can. I haven't always known what that is. And like you said, oh, ineffective. Like, well, I don't know, that sounds like judgy, but sure, I guess in my exploration of figuring out what works and what doesn't, yeah, there were some things I did that, like, well, this doesn't share it with as broad of an audience as I would like to share it with. That's okay. I needed to go in order to be there, I had to be here. So it I'm not doing it that way still on purpose, but I don't feel like it was a misstep to have gone through those chambers in order to get to where I am now. I feel like working with this particular method of sustainable living to help, like, it's not just put a lens on, it's like take a lens off. Like, oh, that all of that joy was just hiding in plain sight right in front of me. Wow. It was like I thought that I was trapped into having to live this other way that was making me feel isolated and depressed and lonely and fat. And now it was like it was right in front of me the whole time. What freedom. So being able to share that freedom with others is in lockstep with that promise I made myself of, because the shape of it hasn't always been clear, but it seems like, okay, how can I keep this promise of living this truth? It's not only about my own life, it's about helping others see how much unnecessary suffering we choose to incorporate into our life and to help them let go whenever they can, whatever they can, not in a coercive way, always an invitation, never an imposition. But yeah, I would call that my underlying motivation.
Can I offer one more thing that the word upstream comes to mind with you, that there were a lot of things that were very important to you. I think of race and class, prison, areas that were very important to you. And you found sustainability upstream from those things, so that to work
Right.
on those things without working on sustainability would be a lot of work on the symptoms and not the causes. And work on sustainability does work on all those things.
Right. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, and I share that as well, of how much it connects to so many other things that have been important to me and still are. And this is how I'm working on them.
Right. Well, look, I see that we are at the top of the hour.
Yeah.
I want to keep our audience engaged in now and in the future. So I think that we should call it a day and maybe invite, feedback. Whoever's watching this, we're always happy to hear ideas of what you would like to hear us talk about. Or I'm sure we'll find ways in the future to also include guests in the conversation. But in the meantime,
As we get the technology, as we understand the technology more and so forth, and this is just the first time they didn't keep the before this of the stuff that we didn't record. It's like, oops, that didn't.
yeah, take
that's not how
one,
to do
take
it.
two, take three. All right, cool. Good to see you, Josh. I'm sure I'll see you soon. Thanks for everything.
Same here. Bye.
Bye.